Energy Collective builds large community solar gardens throughout the state. We have other ones built in other states as well. And we're building 8 of them under the Excel Community Solar Garden Program. One of them happens to be here in Boulder County. And so I'll tell you a little bit more about that as we go along. So, and we may need
Phyllis,
to dim
can
the
you
lights just a little
dim the
bit.
lights?
Thank you. So this is a picture of our big community solar array that's at the Rifle Airport at Garfield County. This is an 858 kilowatt array that was built in June of 2011. So this is just about finished in terms of sales process right now. But the reason why I wanted to see what it looks like is that this is a good example of building a large renewable energy project on what's commonly referred to as marginal land. So the buffer zone around an airport is not appropriate for other types of construction. Where we're constructing the Boulder County arrays, the actual old Superfund site at 66th and Coal Creek. So it's another example of repurposing some land that wouldn't otherwise be usable. Now, if you're not familiar with how community solar works, I want to just briefly describe it to you. So the Clean Energy Collective's community solar garden, this one in particular is going to be in Boulder County. And as it produces power, all of that power is purchased directly by Xcel Energy. So it'll go directly into the power grid. What then happens is that residents in Boulder County, and in this case we're being very specific to the residents of Superior, can actually purchase panels or subscribe to the solar array. People use a lot of different terms, where they can have a particular number of panels that are under their ownership, and in doing so, as the power is sold to Xcel Energy, the customers who own those panels or subscribe to those panels will have those power credits generated and billed directly to their Xcel Energy bill each month. So rather than placing solar panels on your roof, you actually own solar panels in a community solar garden. And then we perform all the monitoring and maintenance of a community solar garden. So today we monitor all of these production facilities on a 7x24 basis, and we'll perform any of the rudimentary cleaning that takes place twice a year, as well as any replacement or repair cost that has to take place. And we set up a separate trust to actually provide the operations and maintenance funding for each of the solar gardens, and we'll talk about that in a minute too. So one of the reasons why you look at community solar gardens rather than a typical rooftop installation is that community solar gardens are optimally located and situated to produce the maximum amount of power. So they are aligned directly on 180 degrees due south. They're at an optimal tilt, which is 35 degrees. And because the panels are professionally maintained, they will generate somewhere in the 15 to 30% more power on an annual basis than what you'll find on a rooftop. Now, in addition, community solar is available to anybody that has an electric meter. So anybody in Boulder County that's an Xcel customer would be able to purchase panels in a community solar garden, where today rooftop solar is usually restricted to about 1 out of 7 homeowners. So you can be a homeowner, you could be a renter, whether you're a business or a residential customer, it doesn't matter. It's available to all people. Now, the other thing that happens with community solar, because it's professionally maintained, you actually have a much longer life cycle in terms of the power production of a community solar array. So when these are installed, the original panels that are placed with a 25-year warranty from the manufacturer. So you not only have a longer warranty period, but because of the professional maintenance, you were able to actually stretch the life cycle of a community solar garden all the way out to 50 years. And that's done through not only monitoring and managing the asset, but also by replacing the panels as they degrade over their life cycle. So panels typically don't stop working. What usually happens is they start to degrade. And so what you do is you either replace some of the panels or you augment the total number of panels in the field to keep the total production level up. Okay? And of course, one unique characteristic with a community solar garden is that Because anybody can own panels in the garden, it creates a transferability that doesn't exist with a rooftop solar installation. So if you own panels in the Boulder County solar array, you can sell them to any other Town of Superior resident. You could also sell them to any other resident in Boulder County, whether they're purchasing your home or whether they live somewhere else. Yes.
Is it okay to ask one
Oh,
question?
yeah, go ahead.
If you purchase one of the panels of that particular type of technology,
Right.
a couple of years down the road when the technology changes and it's better, does it get replaced and updated?
So here's the right way to describe it. So when you build a community solar garden, you're purchasing that technology, which is, in a sense, the best today. And you want that asset to run for as long as possible, because that's how you recoup the capital investment. So typically, if a panel fails within the first 25 years, it's being replaced under the warranty from the manufacturer. But we would not replace existing operating panels anytime during the first 25 years unless they failed, because you want to actually make sure that you're not making another investment in a capital expenditure. You're optimizing the return on the one you've already made. So it's much like any technology investment you make. Once you've made it, you want to use it for the useful life cycle, and then you may augment it or replace it at a later time. But these are very long life cycle assets. They degrade typically about 1% a year for the first 10 years, and then 2/3% for the next 15 after that.
So it's not possible to tap into new technology once you've bought one?
Well, the community solar garden, once it's built, those are the panels that are there to operate. And of course, as we build new ones each year, those will have different ones in it. But you would never just outright replace what's already built, because you will not get the return on the investment then. Okay.
Just like you wouldn't throw away a nuke plant after you built it, 2 years later because there's better nuke technology.
Yeah.
Or coal technology or anything else.
It's true. I mean, this is the right way to think of this. This is an industrial power plant, and you want it to run its life cycle.
If one of the panels fails within the first 25 years, when it fails, then you replace it with the current technology.
With the current technology then, that's right.
Yeah.
So you do get that benefit occurring, but otherwise, you want to make sure you get the optimal production out of them as long as possible. And solar panels don't fail after 25 years. They're just running at about 80% of rated capacity. So solar panels actually last a very, very long time. So that's the key to getting the return on the investment. We'll show you a little bit of that in just a minute.
Did you do the bullet, the 20-year payment stream?
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mention that. Yeah, so under the Excel Community Solar Program, Excel has made a unique twist in their program where typically if you install solar on your roof under the Excel program, you'll receive renewable energy credit payments for 10 years. Under the Excel program for community solar, those payments will last for 20 years. And that is not available in any other form except in the community solar program. And I'll tell you how much that is in just a minute, but that's a unique characteristic, and that's Excel's way of promoting the adoption of community solar rather than rooftop. This is a much better investment for Excel than it is to have people putting solar on rooftops. All right, so in terms of how can the town participate? So we build these big community solar gardens throughout the state. Not only will we be building the one here in Boulder County, but we have 2 going into Denver County, 2 going into Summit County, 2 going into Jefferson County, another one going into Adams County. And as we build these, we will make them available to the public, whether it's commercial or residential customers. But in particular, we have an opportunity to create a program with the town that's very unique. So the program structure is pretty straightforward. What we'd like to do is create what we would call a superior community solar program. And in that program, residents would be able to purchase panels in the solar garden. The residents will not only receive the credit on their Excel bill each month for the power that's produced from the panels that they own, but in addition, they're also going to receive a renewable energy credit payment for 20 years. And that energy credit payment actually has to take place through the town. Because as a community solar garden operator, while we receive these renewable energy credits from Xcel, we cannot pay them directly to residential customers. That's not allowed. That's not allowed because it's a securities issue in terms of a securities investment issue. So this program is designed to take advantage of the town's
Would you mind just
yes.
explaining that last point to me?
Yeah, so when you sell to consumers, one of the things you have to watch out for is that you aren't selling what's referred to as a security. So to be governed by the Securities and Exchange Commission. And while we can sell community solar panels to customers and they can receive credits on their bills, we can't directly pay them cash for the renewable energy credit that we receive from Xcel Energy, as that cash payment would be considered a profit and therefore would be governed by the SEC. So it sounds like a minor issue, but for us as a business, it's an issue that we just simply have to avoid. So this program is modeled after another one that we're working through with the Candelas development, actually, where we're going to use their particular district to actually do something similar to be able to share the renewable energy credit with their residents. Okay. So a couple aspects about this. So the credits that are paid to the residents for the power that's produced by the panels on their Xcel bills, those credits are actually tied to Xcel's retail rate. So they will rise with inflation each year as Xcel raises its rates. The renewable energy credit payment is fixed for the life of the contract for 20 years.
And how much is that?
That's 7 cents per kilowatt hour, which is essentially where the credit rate starts for Xcel on the on-bill credit.
That's the REC?
Yeah, the renewable energy credit is
Okay.
the 7 cents that's referred to right down here.
Mm-hmm.
And at the same time, we would pay 3/4 of a cent per kilowatt hour to the town as an administrative fee for processing this through your water department.
And currently, what is the Excel credit?
The Xcel credit is currently 7 cents per kilowatt hour.
So it's the same as the REC credit?
It's actually 7.082 cents, so it's a little bit
Okay.
different.
Okay.
But it's essentially similar. So the total benefit to the residential customer is going to be a 7-cent on-bill credit with Xcel and a 7-cent credit through the town. Okay, so 14 cents altogether.
And what is kilowatt hour right now of electricity
Xcel's
then?
retail rate is 9 cents per kilowatt hour during the winter months. And then they have a 2-tier tariff in the summer, which is 4 cents for the first 500 kilowatt hours and 12 cents for kilowatt hours above that.
And how many kilowatt hours does a panel produce?
About 402 in the first year. I'll show you the economics in just a minute, because I know that's probably what you're interested in. So this will give you an idea of what the costs are in terms of this type of program. So we haven't finished the pricing yet on the program. We'll probably have that done in the next week or two, but what I'm showing you is indicative of where we'll end up. So in terms of how you purchase solar, you typically purchase solar on a per watt basis. So are you buying a 2.3 kilowatt system, or are you purchasing a 3.5 kilowatt system or a 5 kilowatt system? And the purchase price then is indicative of what's the total cost for the consumer to purchase their system. And that includes then the contribution into the O&M trust fund to maintain the panels. It also then includes the payments that we defer and laser. Okay. That we put into the O&M trust fund from some of the payments from Xcel Energy. So on a per panel basis, you would see that a panel will generate about $56 in credits in the first year. Those credits actually go up each year as the rate of Xcel's energy credit goes up as well.
So you're talking total credits, REC and Xcel Energy?
That's just the credit from, let me think. I showed it just a minute. This is total credits, that's correct. Yeah. So that's both the Excel credit and the rec payment, and then that number will go up each year as the Excel energy rate rises.
What's on the vertical axis there? What are you describing? 3.2, 3.3, 3.4, what is that? Increases in?
This is where we think the pricing per watt will be. And so what I was saying before is that we haven't finalized the pricing, but I know it's going to be somewhere between 320 and 340 per watt. And we'll have that done probably in the next week or two. Okay. So what this does then is it tells us what's the payback period for a residential customer. Yes.
Just laser pointer, if you couldn't stay towards the mic, if you wouldn't mind. Thanks.
Okay. There you go. So this is the payback period. How many years will it take the customer to recoup their capital investment? So that's in the 12-year time frame. And then this return on investment that's how much capital are they returning in the first year in relation to their total purchase price. And I'll show you another example in just a minute here that will help sort of summarize this.
Can I ask you one question, though?
Yes.
3.2, 3.3 watts.
Yes.
I'm sorry, that's what it costs?
That is a purchase price, and when you sell solar products, you price them on a per watt basis.
Okay.
Okay? And so when we look at someone who bought a 2,350 watt system, a 2.3.
So you multiply 3.2 times
That's right.
2350.
You end up with this
75.20.
price of
Got it.
$7,500.
Okay.
Okay?
And what's a typical homeowner using?
5 kilowatts is the average home in the U.S.
So the far right
Very
column.
far right example. Okay? So if you're looking at it where you get a little bit of the summarization now in terms of what does it cost, and then what are the credits that are being received. So in this example, I'll just stay focused on this one right here, this 10 panels, which is a 2.3 kilowatt system. So the purchase price would be approximately $7,700. It'll generate $8,300 in credits in the first 20 years. It'll generate $5,000 in rec payments in that first 20 years. So altogether, total cash and credits is just over $13,000. So their net return on their investment is down here, this $5,600. Okay? Now that's
So-
in the first 20 years.
Yeah, okay.
They will own the asset for the full life of the garden, which is 50.
And 5 kilowatt hours, is that per month, per year, an average home uses?
5 kilowatts is the amount of capacity, so that's a unit. Kilowatt hours are what are produced by the panels. So an average home is probably going to use somewhere around 10 or 11,000 kilowatt hours.
A year.
That's what's produced from a 5 kilowatt system.
I understand now, okay,
Yeah,
thank you.
Sorry. Yeah, it's
You want to see my bill?
new terminology. Oh, do you have your bill with you?
I do.
Yeah.
It's outrageous.
Yeah, it can't get high. So this is what it would look like for a customer to purchase a system that would offset the average home. And then they would end up receiving approximately $29,000 in credits in the first 20 years, which means they'll have a net return on their investment of about $12,500. Now, the reason why this has become such a popular way to endorse a renewable energy is that you not only are generating more power than a rooftop system, but you've got a transferable asset that has a much longer life cycle. So if somebody moves out of their home, they can choose to sell it to the new homeowner. They can take it with them to their new home. They could donate it if they chose to. They could sell it to another utility customer in the Excel area. So you have a lot more flexibility what you're doing with it than just mount it on your house.
They can take it with them only if they stay in Boulder County.
In Boulder County, yeah. So the requirements under the Excel program are that our solar gardens, as they are set up, are restricted to the residents or the customers in that county.
How difficult is it to sell it if they were moving out of state?
They'll need to then sell it to some other Excel customer, and they can do that through us. We'll remarket it for them. If they choose to.
Is that a quick process, takes 6 months?
Here's what I'll tell you, we don't know yet, because since we've been building these over the last 3 years, we've only had 2 occur, so I can't tell you, how difficult or easy it is, but in the 3 examples we had, they were sold the next month, so. What we do know is that community solar gardens are very finite in capacity. This is going to be a 500 kilowatt solar garden that we're building for Boulder County. That's enough to service 100 homes.
And there's not a lot paying 7% these days.
What's that?
And there's not a lot paying 7% these days.
No, that's true, and I think there's another way to look at it too, though. So if you think of communities that have an interest in using clean energy, Boulder County has one of the highest concentrations of people who do that already. This is a product that, our expectation is that it will be sold out before we finish building it. And I think that's probably right.
Well, and that was one of my questions was, what's your, in going ahead with this or not going ahead with this, what's your percent of commitment or pre-sale that you need before you do it?
Oh, before we, meeting with the town? Okay. So, we're going to talk about a couple of those pieces in just a minute.
Okay.
But the short answer is, I'm actually interested in seeing us do this as a pilot with the town, because this creates a very nice model for us to be able to replicate in other locations that we build community gardens in. So we don't have to have anybody as a resident of the town commit to purchasing in the solar garden. It's really a case where I think we should make it available to them, and we'll find out if they're interested in participating. Now, when I talked to Matt, when I had met with you, Lisa, as well, what I'd suggested is that we would set aside 100 kilowatts of capacity, which is about 20 average homes. And people can buy as little as 1 kilowatt. They could buy more. It doesn't matter. As a place to run a pilot from, because we know we're going to build additional community solar gardens in Boulder County. And it's a way to find out, is this something that the residents are interested in if they find compelling. So it doesn't take a commitment to make the program available. So operations and maintenance. Now, we get into this in much more detail when we talk with our customers, but the important part about building a community solar garden is that you want to make sure that the panel owners have some level of protection for their investment. So while we build the community solar garden, we actually establish a separate trust and an operations and maintenance trust that oversees the operations and maintenance of each solar garden. So each of the solar gardens have its own trust funds. That trust is overseen by an administrator, which is our law firm, Perkins Coie. And that trust then is set up to take an initial portion of the sales proceeds that are deposited into the trust, and then on an ongoing basis, a portion of the rec payments that we receive from Excel are deposited every month for the first 20 years as well. That operations and maintenance process then covers all of the equipment costs. It handles all of the warranty and support that we get from the manufacturers. We perform all of the monitoring and management of the array during that period as well. And all of those funds are pooled together. So it actually ends up being a pretty significant contribution in the first 20 years.
So are there fixed or ceiling management fees as well as maintenance fees?
So when we operate as the trustee to oversee the operations and maintenance, the trust is charged the actual the cost of the maintenance fee that was performed. So let's assume we did a cleaning. So if someone comes out to do the cleaning and it costs $600 to clean the community solar array, we charge a 5% fee for handling that. So that would be $30. Okay.
So I see,
Yes.
it says covers insurance, so in here it said they're insurable because they're made in Korea or something, so they're insurable. Does that mean that they're actually covered by insurance, so if they get hail damage or whatever,
Yeah, so there's a few layers of insurance. So besides having the panel's manufacturer's warranty, and it's pretty important who you choose as your manufacturer, because you want them to actually be able to stand behind the warranty for the next 25 years. But in addition, we carry full replacement insurance for any type of damage to the array, whether it was vandalism, theft, a hailstorm, a plane crashes into it. and that's carried at full replacement value.
And that's no additional charge, it's all.
No, that's all part of this operations and maintenance trust, yeah. So the idea here is that we're going to insulate the community solar garden from our business and from any other outside activities by creating the trust.
So on the previous slide where you did ROIs and paybacks and all that, is there a maintenance?
There are no maintenance
Man-
fees
man-
after the purchase price is done. We actually make the contribution up front. So that, let me go back to it for you.
However, the recs are charged with some sort of maintenance component, correct?
No, we actually have rec payments beyond what we're sharing with the town that we use to deposit into the O&M trust fund, and that's typically around 4 cents a kilowatt hour. So that's outside of what's being paid to the town to be shared with the residents. Okay? So this purchase price that you're seeing here, there are no additional costs for the panel owners.
I'm talking about ROIs, though. There is no, I know the hard cost I pay, what I buy my kilowatt hours or whatever, and however
Right.
many panels that is. But in terms of calculating your ROIs, there is no, the fact is maintenance is variable. How do you account for the variability of maintenance? You can't predict at this point in time all the problems you're going to run into and how much it's going to cost to maintain.
Yeah, so actually, you have less variability in this than you'd think. So all of the parts that produce the power, the panels and the inverters, those are all covered by warranty. If they fail, the manufacturers have to replace them, and they pay to replace them. So really what you get down to when you talk about variability is how much does it cost to clean the solar panels? And that's typically twice a year. And that price is pretty well determined, but we actually use an inflation rate on it over the 20 years as well. But the trust fund itself has quite a bit of excess funding in it, so we don't expect to see any problems during the first 25 years. Could something happen that's not covered by that fashion? It's possible. It's unlikely, but it's possible.
And what happens with the trust fund at 20 years?
So the rec payments from Excel stop at 20 years, and then at the end of 25 years is when it's between 20 and 25 years, is when we let the panel owners know this is what the future O&M requirements will be for the next 25 years. And then if Excel is going to continue to pay rec payments after the first 20 years, we'll use a portion of those to fund O&M trust. If not, we'll let the panel owners know what type of contribution needs to be made to continue to fund the trust.
And when you say purchase a panel, so you actually are purchasing a physical asset, or you're buying a percentage of the power being produced?
You're, in the end, the customer actually will own panels, but the way community solar works, you actually are being given a pro rata share of the power production. So it's not the production from your panel, it's the production that your panels represent across the entire array. So that's how you protect the community, because it's possible that you could have a single panel fail and you won't know about it for some period of time. And so when you actually apportion power production, it's actually done by Excel directly. They look at it and they say, you own 1/10 of 1% of the array, you're going to be given 1/10% of the power production for the month.
So just so it's clear to me, so they're actually crediting the power that they're not, Excel's not giving you a cash payment on your monthly bill, they're actually crediting the power that electrical power that you're using?
Excel actually posts a dollar credit on your bill each month for the power that's produced.
It's $1, so it's a dollar credit, not a...
Yeah. Yes, not kilowatt hours.
Not a
It's
kilowatt hour.
Actual dollar.
So, and you described the two tiers, so they're not going to credit you the high tier kilowatt hour. They're just going to give you whatever the cash payment is.
Yeah, the initial credit rates for residential customers for 2013 are set up at just a little over 7 cents per kilowatt hour. So that's about 80% of the average retail rate for a residential customer.
Okay.
Okay. Okay, let me go back to here. This is the reason why we talk about community solar arrays being able to operate for a long period of time. This is what happens with a typical solar panel. It doesn't fail, it typically just degrades over time. And so once you get to the 25-year point in a panel's life, that's where it starts to dip below 80% of production. And so with a community solar array, you can actually augment the panels that are in the array. So an example would be you could add additional solar panels to the array to keep the production level up at 80%, or you could take a portion of the panels out and replace them with newer panels to continue to maintain the total production at 80%. Whereas when you have just a typical home configuration, you typically won't see that happen. So this is a way that you stretch the life of the array out as far as possible. And that's where the greatest returns are for the customers.
So they're rated at like what they're producing at 5 years?
I'm sorry, say that again?
So they're rated at about what they produce in about 5 years? Since they both say over 100%?
Well, what happens is, we're talking about what's happening with the solar production levels, and, you know, when we go to calculate production values, you know, we have to back them off from what they're originally calculated at in the laboratories to say, is this the amount of power that'll be produced here, okay? And so when we go through this process, you know, this 110% is showing you that a community solar panel is producing more power than the panels on your rooftop. Okay. So it's in relation to a traditional solar panel
Thanks.
on a rooftop.
That's what I couldn't figure out.
Yeah.
Thank you.
So that's what that represents. All right, so how would a program like this work? You know, generally, the idea is that we want to make this a program that's easy for the town to participate in, where CEC maintains the responsibilities from a sales and marketing and contracting standpoint with customers. So, you know, CEC is in the business of marketing community solar to customers today. We do that throughout the state. So we perform the marketing activities. We handle all the sales functions. So if somebody has interest in buying panels in the community solar array, they'll be talking to the CEC representative directly. The same thing is true. We do all the billing and collections of payments for people who make purchases. We coordinate and administer the program directly with Excel in terms of making sure that those customers are being credited correctly on their bills each month. And then we will pay the town the 7 3/4 cent per kilowatt hour fee, and that will be done each month. Okay? And that would be paid as a joint marketing fee. That's really being done for the town endorsing a community solar solution.
And
then we
that's
have some-
different from the 3/4 cent?
This is the two
Includes the-
combined, because we'll need to pay both the 7 cents and the 3/4 cent combined together. So that's the 7 3/4 cent
To the town?
to the town.
But the town passes the 7
But the
cents to
town
resident.
passes,
Correct. The town passes the 7
Okay.
cents through to a participating resident, and then the town keeps the 3/4 of a cent. If we had 100 kilowatts sold to Superior residents, it would generate about $1,200 in administrative fees for the town per year. Okay.
so to make sure I understand, you're actually getting 11 cents. You're passing 7 cents on to the customer.
That's correct.
Okay.
Yep, and that other portion we're using is being put into the O&M trust
The
fund.
escrow account, yeah.
Right.
Gotcha.
Yeah. And then we have some reports that we'll need to provide to the town from an administration standpoint. But this process is one that is fairly easy to automate. We interface today with a number of different utilities around the state. So this becomes an automated billing feed that we provide to the utilities billing provider on a monthly basis. And they just take that file in to be posted to the accounts.
So is this the typical way that solar, I mean, I don't know anything about solar gardens. Is this the way that typical solar gardens are set up, that they're through a municipality?
No, because there hasn't been a solar garden in the state that had a rec payment that was being paid with it. So Excel introduced the program in August this year, and it's created this problem where we can't pass the rec payment through to the residential customers.
But it's cool and special for Superior.
So what would be the other way that you would get around this problem?
We wouldn't.
So this is the only way to do
So
it?
I'll give you the example of what we're doing in Boulder County in general. So we're keeping the entire 11-cent rec payment. A portion is going to go to the O&M trust, and then we will sell the rec payment stream to a financial institution.
To decrease the purchase costs, or?
It decreases the purchase costs, and it monetizes the rec payment stream for us now, rather than waiting for it over 20 years. The way we have solved this problem with other electrical providers like San Miguel Power Association or Holy Cross or Colorado Springs Utilities is this rec payment would actually show up as an on-bill credit for the residential customers. Then we don't have to worry about trying to pass a profit through to them.
So question again, just, I think I understand that. So
Yeah.
under one of these scenarios, $56 a month, if we had an Excel bill that's $128 and a water bill that's $128, each one of them, the credit would be then $100. So 56 divided by 2.
Yeah, you're going to see it split just about evenly today.
So it reduced my Excel energy bill by $28 and it reduced my water bill by $28.
By $28, that's correct.
In 1 year.
In 1 month.
That's 1 year
One
for
year.
one panel.
Oh, right.
So, and nobody buys one panel typically.
Okay.
So the maximum amount of capacity that a resident can buy under the XL program is they cannot buy more than 120% of their average annual usage. So that means that an XL customer won't be able to have credits on their bill that are greater than their monthly usage, because the XL credits are about 80% of the retail rate, and you can't buy more than 120% of total capacity.
So give me a good example.
So a good example is if you had a $100 a month electricity bill, you could buy enough capacity in the community solar rate to offset that $100 of usage each month, but it means you'd be buying about 120% of your actual usage volume. So the dollar credits equal the same amount you're being charged by Excel.
So how many panels would that be?
If for an average home, if the average home uses 22 panels or 5 kW, they would end up buying about 26 panels. So about 20% more, 4 panels more.
And how many panels are in this program?
Well, there'll be 2,170 roughly.
And where's the land that this is going to be sitting on?
It's at Coal Creek in 66th, so that's the old Superfund site. It's just a little west of here.
Is it out near, kind of near the Excel gas? Yeah.
It's past there.
Past that?
It's past that, but there's actually a series of substations that are there.
If you go along the 66th and look off to the right, if you
It's
go,
on the east side of 66, next to the XL.
Oh, it's on the east side of
Compression
66.
station or
Yeah.
something.
Yeah.
It's on land right next to that,
Yeah, and it's privately owned land, actually.
okay.
privately owned.
So I see there's land, that was the dump that has pipes coming up
Yeah.
on the west side. I thought that's what you were,
Yeah, no, it won't be there. It won't be there.
I have a question, maybe it's too soon for it, but I was reading in your proposal, okay, let me find, just had this spot again. Okay, there are monthly rec payments. The paragraph says, "The rec payments will only be available to town Superior residents and are made possible through an exclusive marketing agreement between CEC and Public Works and Utilities." What do you mean by an exclusive marketing agreement? What is the exclusivity that you're talking
Yeah.
about?
So the exclusivity is that if we do this program together, I can only make it available to Superior town residents because they have to be a resident in Superior and a customer of Public Works.
I was worried that you were meaning that Superior as a town could not seek to make a similar agreement for another array with somebody else.
No, you could. You could. All right, let me see. I think we got to the end here. Oh, a couple of other things. So one of the things that we do provide to our customers is the ability to monitor what's happening with their panel's power production, whether it's on a daily basis or any other time. So you can actually log onto our website, or you can download the app onto your smartphone. So it's very easy to see how much power is being produced and how much carbon or other issues you're offsetting as well. So a lot of the customers like to have that around.
One other question, what is the
Yeah.
minimum number of panels that you
So-
are required to buy?
1 kilowatt is the Xcel Energy minimum, so that's going to end up being either 4 or 5 panels. Now, the only thing I didn't mention is that we actually have a financing partner, Super Credit Union, which is a Colorado-based credit union. I don't know if you're familiar with them, but they actually provide residential lending for the purchase of community solar panels. That's an exclusive program they have with us, and that's a very aggressive financing program where people can choose 3-year, 5-year, 7-year, or 10-year terms. And those are all just personal loans backed by the collateral, meaning the solar panels. And they have really attractive rates associated with them today.
So you have 20 homes guaranteed to the town of Superior. How is the rest of the, so the rest of the array would be monetized like you described?
Well, it's going to be sold to a combination of residential and commercial customers. We're working through some of those details right now. We have some large commercial customers that are interested in purchasing very large portions of the array. So we're trying to figure out how much we're going to split up between residential and commercial.
But to get around the security problem for the rest of the array, how?
Commercial customers can actually be paid the rec payment directly, because they're considered a qualified entity. Residential customers can't. So, we will not have that much capacity sold to residential customers in Boulder County. My guess is that if your residents become enthusiastic and, end up purchasing the 100 kW that we'd like to earmark for them, we actually have additional capacity available beyond that. I don't know how much yet, because we're just starting to work through it. But, realistically, I would guess that we'll probably only have 30 or 40% of the array consumed by residential customers.
So this might be a question for Paul. I know that we have worked out something with Key Bank for our arrays where they take direct payments and things like that. Would there be a way to do that through this program here, or I'm trying to understand what that, it seems like we've done things like this in the past.
For the town's purchase?
For the town's purchase.
I think the town couldn't get in that instance, the town couldn't pay the credit.
We can't get, right.
So the bank was getting the credit and passing it on to
Well, it was the rebate.
rebate.
So if we go,
Yeah, and the federal tax credit. Yeah, you're right, Joe. But
Yeah, that's a little different for us. So Matt and I had a chance to talk about this. The town can actually make a purchase in the community solar array, and you will benefit from the federal tax credit that we use to decrease the cost, and you can receive the full 11 cent per kilowatt hour rec payment for the next 20 years as well. So because of how community solar gardens are built, we can do that with the town. So as an example, if you decided to make a purchase for the town, the initial cash and credit rate is it'll be around 16.5 to 17.5 cents per kilowatt hour. And then that will go up with inflation. So, I'd love to have the town make some purchase in the community solar array, if only to be able to represent to the customers that they feel it's a reasonable investment as well. But it's not a requirement for us to do this program. I'm not worried about selling the capacity in this array. What I'm really interested in is creating a program that we can replicate with other towns to get around this problem with Xcel. And so this is a really nice place to start, because of course Kent Crawford's working with me as one of our independent sales reps, and he said, oh, I know just the people to talk to.
So tell me about Clean Energy Collective.
Yeah, so this business was started back in June of 2009, and we built the first community solar arrays up in Holy Cross Energy. The first one in June of 2010, second one went in 2011. Since that time, we've built a 1.1 megawatt array out in San Miguel Power Association service area. We have another 500 kilowatt array that's just been activated down in Colorado Springs Utilities. We have another pilot project that we built and was sold out in Poudre Valley Rural Electric area, which is Boulder County and around Fort Collins. We have another program that we completed down in Kit Carson Electric in Taos, New Mexico. We have another one we're building in Wright Hennepin in Minneapolis.
But this is a privately held for-profit company.
We're a privately held company, and we just finished a rather large private equity round, raising $13 million in December of 2012 from two large private equity investors that are specialists in the renewable energy field. So this is a for-profit business, and each of these community solar arrays, our business is pretty straightforward. We build the array, and our profit is the difference between what it costs us to build it and the price we sell it at. And then each time we leave the community solar array inside a trust with its operations and maintenance fund.
So that's the protection, say, God forbid, the company goes bankrupt.
That's right.
Then the trust
The trust continues to
would be
operate.
enough to cover it for 20 years.
That's right, yeah.
I have a question for Matt. Probably not a big deal, but what would be our cost for processing the billing part of this?
Yeah, Paul and I have had some discussions on that, and the number of households that we're talking about, it's going to be minimal. The $1,200 a year figure that Tom stated would be more than enough to cover our costs.
So now, philosophically speaking, which is, I presume that this was a privately held for-profit company, that we haven't marketed any other company this way.
Right.
What would be should we get into that business as marketing for companies?
Well, I think because it has a specific benefit for residents, and I don't know of any other projects in the county.
Sorry.
It's okay.
Doctor's office music.
Building one of these projects, and it's something that I think at least past boards have said they were interested in pursuing, is enough for me to justify marketing it to residents.
So if we got into that, I'm sure that the lawyer would be able to provide plenty of whereases why we would be doing this.
Yes.
For this one particular company, as opposed
Not
to
saying
Pizza Hut
yes.
saying, well, why aren't you marketing for me?
Yes.
Who, following up on that, who does a due diligence on this company? Capitalization, who the principals are, whether or not they've been in prison for felonies, fraud, et cetera? Who does that?
Our staff.
Okay.
Are there other questions I could answer for you right now? Yes.
This is, so the issue about not being able to, the securities exchange issue, does Excel see that as a loophole that they're looking to maybe fix later, or is it something they're comfortable with?
Well, Excel's program is pretty well defined. They pay renewable energy credits to the builder and the developer of renewable power plants. So if you had one built on your home and you owned it, they would pay the renewable energy credit to you. But when you build a community solar garden or a large project, it has to go to the developer and builder. That's just how their program is set up. That won't change, I don't think.
But this way of transferring it to get the funding to the households, is that something that they're okay with that?
Yeah, I
Into
mean,
the
Excel
future? It's
Excel
not
doesn't
something
have an opinion one way.
backfill?
Excel doesn't have an opinion one way or
They don't.
another, because their issue is they want the renewable energy onto their system. They're making the renewable energy credit payments in exchange for buying the green attributes. That's what they get out of it. And so,
This isn't something that's be subject to a later legal opinion. That's sort of where I'm coming from.
yeah.
And they
no.
might revisit and say, oh, you can't do it that way, and therefore, that's where I'm headed.
Yeah, so the answer is no. So, and as I mentioned before, we share the renewable energy credits directly with the commercial customers.
Not to be overly suspect, but does the town have the ability to do an independent audit?
Sure. And when you say an independent audit of the power production of the array, or?
Well, to make sure that everything's being, all the financial aspects are flowing correctly. Just make sure it's all being done properly.
Yeah, that's part of what I mentioned earlier, that it's not just enough to actually send billing files or process payment to you. There's an administrative and a control process you want to have in place so you can make sure that the things add up correctly. So, and that's not hard to provide. Anything else then?
Does Beth want to talk about the ARCAD? We had a couple of questions or comments or something about wanting something bigger. Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah, sure.
Good evening, Beth Moisky, Assistant Town Manager. ARCAC met last week, and we heard a presentation in December from this group. And last week we met, and they had one question that I recall, which was, can we offer more than...
Can more be set aside?
Yes, so more be set aside than the 20 homes. So that was really all that they wanted to know, is if we couldn't capitalize on a larger offer with this opportunity.
You want me to? Okay. So, here's what I'll tell you. This is a better program for our company than it is to sell to just any resident in Boulder County, because we're able to distribute the rec payment down to the residential customer ultimately. So if we would, here's the right way to answer the question. If you have enthusiasm for doing this program, we don't have to set a limit on how much Superior residents could purchase. I mean, there's a logical limit, which is I've got some commercial customers that are already underway, like the county of Boulder. And so could we have more than 100 kW sold this way? Certainly.
Do we have to outbid Boulder County to do that?
Well, that won't quite work. But
Okay.
Because they're buying it as a commercial customer, so they're paying a little higher rate, but they get a little bit more financial benefit.
I just meant would we have to outbid whoever else you're...
Yeah, so here's the right way to do it. If this program makes sense, we don't have to put a limit on how much we use, meaning 100 kilowatts. I think the residents will determine how much is really wanted. What I can't do, though, is I can't take 100 kilowatts of capacity and set it aside for the next year, because my interest is in selling the asset as quickly as possible. So if we had residents come forward and they want to use 150 or 200 kilowatts of capacity, we can make that happen. It's one of the things where this is where we'll need to start our marketing, though, is with this group first. So hope that helps answer.
So explain to me, earlier I thought I heard you say that you are not going to wait till you have these 20 homeowners to start anything. It's nothing you do is dependent on having those stitched, signed, sealed, and delivered. Did I hear that correctly?
Yes, so if you want to enter into this program together, you do not have to have 20 residents signed up for it for us to say, let's make the program available. We can make the program available with nobody having interest in it yet.
Well, what if we market the heck out of it and we at max get 5 people? What then?
Then those 5 people will be able to benefit from the program.
okay, at the same
Because they have
levels.
enough interest from other parties
Right.
to where they can sell
Okay.
all of the capacity.
Okay.
Yeah.
Come on.
Yeah, this is a case where we're just trying to do something that's a little bit unique, and that actually is a little bit better program for the residential customer. And so the idea is, I don't need you to commit to any volume or capacity amount or commit on the residents' behalf. I think it's a case where, let's find out if the residents have interest in it, and if they do, we'll make as much capacity available as possible. And if it's successful and we run out of capacity that's available, you know, we're going to go through the bidding on the next set of solar arrays for Excel, which is going to build more in Boulder County, so we could always come back and run a program again. So, yes.
This is something I just don't recall from your presentation. To loop it through Superior, does it have to be in Superior's town limits or within Boulder County, or could you build something in New Mexico and loop it this way? I didn't get the.
They have to be a customer of this Public Works.
And the project has to be in the county.
That's fine.
Yeah.
County, not the town.
Or it could be in the town.
But it doesn't have to be in the town.
It doesn't have to be
Okay,
in town.
that's
So
what I was.
For Excel, it's Boulder County.
Thank you.
And in this case, truly customer Public Works.
Thanks.
Yeah, okay. Anything else?
Any other questions?
All right, well, thank you very much for having me, I appreciate it.
I'm sorry, to step out. Next,
Don't we need
what's the
next
next
steps?
step?
Well, I think the next step is we'll work with, we'll do our due diligence on the company, work on an agreement with Clean Energy Collective to bring back for the board's approval, and then if there's interest from the town board, purchase from a town government perspective in the solar community garden, we could pursue that as well.
I guess I'd need to know where it would make sense for us. Well, actually, it's just credit. It's not.
It's just credit, yeah.
Not aimed at a particular location.
Right, it's just an offset of energy used by the town government.
I thought we had total offset already with the
Buy all
last.
or-
Paying extra.
Yeah, we pay extra for wind source.
Yeah.
I don't
We have
understand.
about, as far as a solar portion of our renewable energy portfolio, let's say, we're about 15% with the 500 kilowatts roughly we have in solar right now.
But the rest,
But the rest is offset
It's
through
green power, but
the wind energy
different way.
credits through Excel.
so
so
we
we still
could,
buy from Excel.
so we could explore if we got rid of the wind source fee, whether or not it makes sense to purchase the rest of it through the solar garden if they were open for that, but.
Is that an analysis Paul could do for us?
Yeah.
That'd be great.
Yeah, we can do that. So we'll bring
Okay.
that.
All right, need to wrap it up because we have a meeting coming up. Thank you very much for coming.
You're welcome.
So, be an interesting discussion. So,
Thanks so much.
That's really interesting.
why don't we take 2 minutes for anybody who needs to take a break?
That was the hope that they made for us.
Thanks. Presentation.
Yeah. The only thing we're doing is getting more information.
And I wanted to piggyback on that. He was a colleague of mine for many years at Superior Elementary, and my heart goes out to him and his daughter and his whole family. And then also, if you want to go to Facebook and look me up, Deborah Williams, I put on my most recent wall post a picture of her and her dad, and kind of what kids do is they often like to put pictures up, and they like to see how many likes, the like button that they can get, makes them feel good. And he posted the very beginning and how he brought this forward to everyone on Facebook. So everyone clicked the like, and so everybody is basically doing that. So if you get a chance, look me up and put a like on his picture with his daughter. Thanks.
Thank you. Trustee Pennington?
Happy birthday to Trustee Gregoris.
Thank you.
I'd sing to you, but that could be ugly.
Happy birthday.
Tease then, I wouldn't go too far down that path.
Thank you.
Prior to this meeting, 4 of us trustees sat down with Energy Smart officials and taped our just personal experience with the Energy Smart program that's going to be made available to us for our Channel 8, as well as they're going to use it on their website and their campaigns. I attended on January 4th a US 36 legislators breakfast, and that is a tremendous resource. I would recommend to any trustee who wants to go to that. They have the monthly meetings, and they occasionally have these bigger meetings, but this legislator breakfast is very important, particularly post-election. We've got some great local folks who have very prestigious positions. For example, Wally Heath, Senate Transportation Committee, and Dickie Lee Hollingsworth is a key position. I can't remember her exact title, but a lot of good local legislators in key positions. So,
Yeah, I think he's chair of the Transportation Committee.
yeah,
And isn't she majority leader?
I think that's what I wanted to say, Lisa, but I got a little skittish there. But even some of the newer guys are on the Senate Transportation Committee and in some pretty powerful positions otherwise. So I just think it's great. I think we've got a great local legislative contingent. Keep the transportation thing going. We have the Northwest Quadrant Transportation Study that the mayor referenced last meeting, and then I've been reading about this BOCO Transportation Study, and given the potential transportation issues we as a community have front and center, I wanted to know, how are we represented in those two initiatives? Is staff representing us?
Well, in the Northwest, I think it's the mayor and Beth Moisky.
Yeah, it coordinates a little bit through the US 36 mayors and commissioners, but it's an RTD study that a consultant is actually going to run.
Okay, how do we make sure the questions are asked that we want asked or that are relevant to us?
Right, so if you have particular, there's issues that I want to have that personally I would like for them to see. If the town in general has interest in the Northwest area, I'd be happy to pass that along as well. So
It just seems to me, when's the deadline for that? We're having a Transportation and Safety Committee meeting, the next meeting, 2 weeks from tonight. Is that something we should be considering, or is that too late?
Well,
I think that's just a request for proposals going out right now. I'd have to look at the timeline.
And I don't know if it's an agreement or an MOU, but that'll be on the next board agenda as well for the Northwest study.
Okay. I just want to make sure that we use every potential opportunity that, and Dr. Deb does a great job there to make sure our transportation needs are front and center. And then, of course, we're doing the Superior Transportation Plan. So we've got the Planning Commission really up on that, so I just want to...
The Northwest area study really focuses on transit, so transit questions that would need to be addressed would be part of that. It has to do with significant thought is, rail's not coming anytime soon, so should we beef up buses along 36 or, expand where the buses might go in the corridor, so...
Right. Anyway, I just wanted to raise the awareness of that.
Can I ask one question about the same thing, and I'll let you continue? Is the transportation study, is it logistics more, or is it also financial in funding?
Not so much funding.
Okay.
Okay, prior to the holidays, I lose the date, there was an OSEC meeting, and you'll recall I became the liaison, Deb's still attending, but they had a pretty in-depth discussion on Level 3. They had recommended that all of Level 3 become open space, not just two-thirds. And I just wanted to make sure I expressed that. We went through some of the multifaceted approach we as trustees need to take. We're not just open space oriented, we're economic development oriented. We do worry about jobs, we do worry about supporting retail, but I wanted to pass that on. I'm not sure if they took a vote after the meeting, how they would vote on that, but it was a healthy discussion. And a thing that I think is very interesting to them, and I want to go on these as well. I don't see any reason why other trustees who are interested couldn't go on them. They intend to do site visits in the next, when the weather permits, as it gets a little warmer, of Shan-Shan, Level 3, and Zaharias, to where they actually go out and walk those sites. And if you're interested, I'll let you know when those are.
I would be interested in that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And then,
And
Matt,
we'll ask the property owners to make sure that it's okay.
No, right?
What are those trustees doing in the property?
I think when they did that a few years ago, definitely they got
they're aware of that because they did get sort of shoot off some pieces. They brought up that. Matt, when it's your time, if we could talk about the meeting with the Rocky Mountain Fire as well as
I've got it.
our next board retreat. I
Right.
would appreciate that. That's all for me.
Trustee Gregors, anything else?
Yeah, over the holidays, I was driving around town with a family, and I was just kind of showing them some of the improvements that have taken place over the last year. And I'm impressed with the progress that's been made on the on 76, the
Guardian Store?
the Guardian. Thank
Yeah.
you. The Guardian stores. It's starting to look really nice.
Yeah, they're pretty close.
And also the Town 9 progress that's been made. I remember, years and years ago when we first came on the board, that was something that had been talked about to death, and the feeling from members of original Town was that this is probably something that will never happen or never finish. And we're so close to it now. I think it's really nice. I can't wait to see the landscape come in.
Right, yeah.
In the spring,
Really
and that's when we're really going to look really nice. So it's nice to see a dream become reality, and I'm very pleased with what we've done here for Original Town. So
You're right. When with ProStack, we warned
remember
Original
that?
Town to let them know we wanted to engage them, get their comments, that there were several residents that said, yeah, you've said this before, it's not going to happen, you guys do what you want.
And I remember that feeling that I don't want to be one more person up here, or another board that promises and doesn't deliver. So to finally see it, we're so close now. I guess I know there are a few things left to do in the landscape, but I think it's good to keep our word, I guess, to our citizens. It feels good. So
Very good, thank you. Trustee Williams?
I was not here during the Christmas holidays, but I do want to thank Superior Maintenance for their snow plowing efforts in town. I heard great things. We had a huge storm, and they delivered like
was it a huge
pros.
storm? I wasn't.
Well, they were out on Christmas, which...
Right.
On Christmas Day.
It was actually kind of a perfect storm. You have go to church on Christmas Eve and come out and it's snowing. And on Christmas Day, kids can go sleigh riding. It was just like ideal, but it wasn't a hassle.
But I'm sure that it was a hassle for them to come out on Christmas and Christmas Eve and Christmas Day, and so I thank them for that, their service. I also attended the Open Space Advisory Committee meeting just as a resident, sitting on the sidelines, which was really nice after many years of being a part of that committee. So I will continue being a part of it just as part of history for the Open Space Advisory Committee, having been there on 7 years, I think, or 8 years, something like that. I had a First Fridays Donuts with Deb a couple weeks ago. It's the first Friday of every month, 7:30 to 9:30 at Juju's Bakery and Cafe. And I had about a dozen show up kind of within the 2 hours that I had held the activity. And my topic I had for the day was about the toll road and some of the recent activities that have been happening over the holidays. And I also brought 3 books with me, and so I loaned out 2 of them. And there was a definitely very lively discussion on the toll road, how it will affect us, if it will come, the land that it's sitting on, which is Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge, which used to be a nuclear weapons facility that went through a Superfund site cleanup. And so there were many different, everybody came for a different reason, which was nice to kind of hear everybody's points of view. And I'll definitely have that topic many more times, because I don't think we're finished with that topic anywhere close. And U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service just sold the eastern part of Rocky Flats for a toll road by Jeffco, Broomfield, and Arvada, who are planning on building a toll road that will eventually someday in 20, 30 years, who knows, connect a full beltway around. It remains to be seen if that will ever occur. But as I see it, they are basically using this toll road to spur development for their Candelas project, which is a very, very massive development on all levels, basically building a small little town, slight maybe industrial town, as I see it. And it borders Rocky Flats Wildlife Refuge. So that's a big concern, and I think that we need to look about how this toll road moves forward and how we can be a part of that process in making sure that it is safe for our residents and that it's not kicking up plutonium and that there isn't plutonium in the soil. So I think that that's number one. We need to find out, is it contaminated or isn't it? Just hearing that there was a cleanup is not good enough for me. I need to see evidence that it is safe. So on that, moving on to the next subject, I am giving a Kudos Corner call out to a resident that went above and beyond for our town, and that is Steve Smith for this month. He is a Mustang football director and a Superior Chamber member and a past Rock Creek HOA member, or resident, or actually he was a president.
President.
Sorry. He was a resident, he was a director, and he was a president. He spent many years on the HOA. And he set up and ProStack, I'm sorry, now he is a ProStack member. Advisory committee, and so he set up a toy drive and a coat drive this holiday season. He partnered with the town, the chamber, and Mustang football, and I believe he hosted an event at his house to promote it and distribute the items. that were donated to different various needs around our community and in the Boulder County area. And so I thank Steve Smith for being a great asset to our community. Thanks.
Thank you. Along the lines of thanks, I wanted to thank the Mayor Pro Tem. I've been unable to, I'm unable to go to the DC lobbying trip due to a work conflict, and he graciously accepted that opportunity, so I wanted to thank him publicly. And then the only meeting I had was with Metro mayors, and a couple of topics discussed, but in general it's the things that we're going to be talking about in the upcoming year, which probably will be transportation funding and education funding for K through 12 as well as higher ed. But I'll let you know what happens with that. That's all I had. Trustee Scamatz?
Thanks. I attended our cycling committee meeting, our CAC meeting, and I'm glad that new members are on the agenda for this coming meeting. It'll be nice to have a full contingent. I think the folks who are on tap were at the meeting and were productive and assets and all that. Let's see. My next coffee buzz is Saturday the 26th. It's a little earlier, 7 till 8:15. Also available in live email if anybody is interested. That's another way to go if you can't get out that early. Meetings, you know. I wanted to remind both the board and Mr. Magley that I'm still interested in having us do a community meeting that's involving of the way that, similar to the way that Longmont's been doing that with phone, and so I really would like to find an appropriate meeting where we need to make some decisions or public hearing or something like that, where we involve more than just the very valiant folks who show up in person, but I'd like to be more involving, and I'd like to really see that happen. Could we please maybe target the first quarter, or at least by the second quarter of this year?
Yeah.
I'm happy to also see that the other thing I really wanted to have happen, which is the disaster scenario, is looking like it's going to go forward, I think, in quarter one as well. Is that right? Okay. So I think those were all my ends.
Okay. Thank you. Trustee Sterling?
I don't have much. I attended the opening of the museum every Saturday, first Saturday of every month. The museum is open, and it's kind of a neat place to go, and those are really good people involved in that. I find it rewarding to talk with them each time. That being said, I'm going to miss my very first Historical Commission meeting this Friday, but Trustee Pennington's graciously agreed to carry the mantle one more month for me. Thank you. I would ask the town manager if he could reiterate the planned meetings for the transportation. Plan.
Yeah, I was going to mention those tonight, and then we'll be sending out
And
communications as well.
you might want to mention the Energy Smart and $90 thing, because I forgot to.
I'll cede the floor to you since you know it better than I do.
Oh, just to remind the residents again that Boulder County has its Energy Smart program, provides, helps hook residents into, does an audit, helps hook residents into all the rebates to help make the homes more comfortable and more energy efficient, and they're having the discounted $90 audits, so it's really worth pursuing.
Yeah, that's about a third of the price of a normal audit at least. So it's a great deal. That's all I have.
Okay. Trustee Hansen?
Yep. Attended a ProStack meeting on December 19th, and one of the topics we discussed was, well, the update on the Town Line Park, and it's coming along. It's a little behind schedule where we wanted it to be, but weather issues and other little minor setbacks have put it behind, but it'll be done in time for spring. Get some nice landscaping in there, and it's going to be a great park. There's a discussion on a new program that the town staff has initiated. It's an online provider called Map My Hike, and it's really nice where the citizens can go on a hike, and then they can post the route and their experience on the hike, give a little overview about what they experienced, but they can also enter in all kinds of data, description of the hike, distance, elevations at the beginning and at the end, and then the average grade. Now, we were told this program is supposed to be accessible through the town website, and I couldn't find it on the town website.
Sounds like Matt My Run that people get on their smartphones and stuff.
Okay, I'll check on that.
Okay, but it's a great program that everybody should go to and just, get a feel for what the hike is going to be like. It'll give you difficulty and all that kind of stuff. So if you're going with kids or older adults or whoever, it'll give you some difficulty rating for them.
If you go to the site and map a hike, do you get credit for the calories burned without actually doing it?
I don't know. You can suggest that, Joe. Let's see. There was also a review of the 2013 work plan that the board is going to see on the 28th, the next meeting of this month. But there's also one item that was discussed quite a bit, and I think there's a little bit of misunderstanding on what the project is. And we had voted on the budget for this year, $50,000 to go towards a community/rec center investigation. And I think it needs to be clear that there's going to be a pretty thorough vetting of this program, that we're going to involve first the community, get their feedback, and first determine whether we want to have a community center or a rec center or a combination of both, and then determine where the site should be, and then also the feasibility of it. So there's going to be a series of meetings that will happen leading up to this determination. So I think it's going to be money well spent. I attended, on December 12th, I attended a Boulder Valley School District Superintendent's Budget Advisory Committee meeting. And this particular meeting was mostly, we saw a presentation on the current state of the economy and the potential issues that Colorado could experience if we went over the fiscal cliff. Since we didn't experience that, it's kind of a moot point, but I think just a couple of points that should be brought up is that Colorado could have seen a reduction of $1.1 billion in defense spending and also $61 million in non-defense spending had we gone over the fiscal cliff. Now, I don't think we're out of the woods yet, so there still could be some issues coming up, but at least we're beyond that point. There's further discussion on the jobless rate remaining elevated, much higher than we've typically seen in the past after this recession, and there's unprecedented numbers of Medicaid caseloads and also SNAP enrollment, which is food stamps. And they don't think that that's going to go down that much, even if more people start going back to work, that they don't anticipate those levels going down too much in the near future. Then there was also discussion about the options that towns and the state could do and stay within TABOR, and that's close exemptions, deductions and credits, expand sales tax to include services, extend sales taxes to include digital downloads. And then there was also some discussion about requiring the collection of sales tax on internet and catalog sales. And one of the things they brought up was that Amazon historically has adamantly fought that. But now that Amazon has spread out and has warehouses in key areas around the country, that might give them an advantage because they can ship next day to everybody with a minimal cost. So they might not be so opposed to having towns collect sales taxes on internet sales. One last thing here. On January 9th, I attended another Boulder Valley School District Superintendent's Budget Advisory meeting. And this meeting was focused on enrollment. It was an enrollment update for Boulder Valley School District. And I'll just give you the 5 bullet points that they summarized. Average 5-year growth has been 0.8%, or 232 students per year, with a low of 81 new students and a high of 470. There is upward pressure from smaller outgoing 12th grade class and a potential increase in new housing units that could drive up enrollment. Other measures such as employment, migration, and potential income kindergartner appear typical of the last few years. And then Boulder Valley School District will adopt a middle-of-the-road enrollment and forecasting. They have a high end, a low end, and then a mid-road. And they've decided to take the middle road because there's implications that if you under-forecast or if you over-forecast, both good and bad. So for 2013-2014 school year, they anticipate 0.7% increase, upwards of 30,000 students by 2017-2018 school year. And then the last thing is I'm part of a working group in the Front Range. It's mostly made up with rugby organizations, Boulder Rugby, Broomfield, CU Rugby. And this group really started looking for places that we could build a stadium, build more playing facilities for youth sports. It's kind of taken off and generated a life of its own. We had a second meeting with Mike Donovan, the mayor of Glendale, and got a couple of nice tours of their facility and an understanding of how they paid for that facility, why they did it, and how they're using it, moving forward, and how it's helped their economic development. So that's going to be moving forward more. We're going to be looking at different places we can have fields. We've looked at Superior property that we could build additional playing fields that would be used for not only rugby, but soccer, lacrosse, and everything. That's it.
Thank you. Anything from the town clerk? Town manager?
Yeah, just a few things. I gave you a year-in library book drop stats, which seems to be getting used quite a bit, so that's good.
Pretty impressive.
Yeah. Broomfield, we received a development referral application for Broomfield for development that's proposing 200 row home apartments over, and the land is right behind the Shell gas station and that area there, that tire center there. It's south of that, on that vacant land, so.
Is that off 120?
No, right on Colton.
Kind of by the Walmart, kind of adjacent to the Walmart there.
Yeah.
Of Colton.
Oh,
Yes.
wow.
And
I couldn't.
it's great they told us, but why do they have to tell us?
They don't.
Okay,
Yeah.
thanks.
And how you word it is a little confusing. A development referral. It sounds like...
They were referring us, yeah. I was
Yes.
confused at first initially.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, they're just asking us if we have any comments on the development.
Okay.
Is all.
I thought initially they were referring a potential development to
It'd be nice of them.
the I know.
But it's just a courtesy.
Yes.
Yes.
Provide information on RTD's board of directors selected new leadership for their board, so I provided that for you. And then John Fair has submitted his resignation. He's our representative on the district board. And then we've sent out an e-blast on the process that the county commissioners are going to go through to fill that spot in case any residents might be interested in submitting their application. So. The Celtic Steps, which probably Heather's going to talk about more, had their ribbon cutting, so I'll let her do that. The transportation plan update, those community meetings, the first one's scheduled for January 31st at 7 p.m. here at Town Hall. And then the second one will be on February 7th at 7 p.m., and that one's going to be at the fire station community room. So we'll put information through e-blast out to residents as well, just to remind them prior to those meetings so that they can.
The second one was February 7th?
Yes, at 7 p.m.
So they're a week apart.
Yeah.
Matt, could I request that we get in the habit of day of, to always put a reminder out?
Yeah.
That's always good.
Yeah.
And I have one other request.
Yeah.
Maybe try to avoid the same night always, so that if someone's got a Thursday night thing, they can never attend a meeting, something like that.
Right. Yeah.
Just curious.
Yeah.
Mix it up.
Our Public Works Department received an award from the Colorado chapter of the American Public Works Association for our 2012 street maintenance project. So
That's a
it's nice.
turnaround
Yeah.
from the past.
The two new bus shelters were installed on Rock Creek Parkway near Safeway and the Horizons Apartments, and then the next two have been ordered and should be installed by the end of March, I would say.
On a night like this.
Yeah.
It's important.
Yeah.
They have heaters in them, right?
They do not.
I'm just...
No, but they protect from the wind, though.
No solar heaters in there.
No solar heating.
Our RTD bus route 228, ridership was up just over 1% from the year before, so that's some improvement. So.
Do we know absolute numbers?
I can get those to you,
That
yeah.
would be great.
Do we have a reason why they're up 1%?
Could be fuel prices, could be the economy, it could be,
Is there any metrics to find out, what?
We can check with RTD, I'm not sure if
It's not a significant increase, though. It's not like 5 or 10%.
Yeah.
Yeah, at least it's not a decline. I I guess I was happy to see. And as Trustee Hansen mentioned, I was with him on that tour of the Glendale Infinity Park, and it was quite impressive, actually. I guess if anybody else is interested in going, and I'm sure I can set that up with their mayor and city manager. If you'd like to go down and take a look, we can set up a date and time.
Councilwoman Becker from Boulder, she was there too.
Right.
With their parks director.
So if there's interest, just let me know and we can set something up. The fire district meeting, so we had been working on some dates, and then there was some dialogue about how we want to do that meeting with their board, the district board. So I was proposing just a informal dinner with their district board to talk about their issues. But we can do two ways. My thought is we have a work session with the board and have the chief come down, where residents can come down and participate and ask their questions along with the board, and then have a dinner with the district board and keep it more informal between the board of trustees and their district board. But I'm opening it up to your thoughts.
I'd like to at least see one thing that's a work session.
Okay.
I think residents are exercised enough to have them have a
Okay.
chance. And the informal sounds fine, but I'd like to at least make sure that we have, residents have a formal way to get some feedback.
Okay.
And I have a feeling that that will be a well-attended work session,
Unlike today.
unlike today.
My guess is, I wonder if there'd be a way to do both of these things, have a informal thing beforehand and then have a work session afterwards, as opposed to trying to coordinate their schedules
Yeah,
twice.
I agree, that's fine.
Yeah.
I'm not married to the fact that we need to have a board-to-board.
Well, I think it goes
But if it works out.
Yeah, I mean, the board has expressed an interest in having those with not only the HOA board and all the committees, but, the fire district board would make sense in my mind as well.
I like the mayor's suggestion if it works
Okay.
out.
Okay. Okay. And then, board retreat. My thought was, look for dates in March, beginning of March. Or unless the board wants to do sooner than that, I'm open to
I like
suggestions.
retreats prior to the beginning of a new calendar year, but certainly, since we haven't had that, I'd like it close to the beginning of the new calendar year.
And
Prior
my
to
schedule,
this,
I'd rather
very
see in
difficult to
February.
Excuse me?
Given my schedule, I'd rather see in February if that's possible.
Okay.
Just not the first week of February for me.
And I already am going to be attending a workshop that's the entire weekend for Dr. and that's late February.
Okay.
So I don't-
Well, we'll look for some dates.
Okay.
It sounds like February. is
getting
what I'm
booked
hearing,
up
so.
quick.
I'm at the middle part of February, so we'll get early, middle, and
If we shoot for February,
Maybe Valentine's Day.
February is
We'll
pretty...
do our
pretty
best.
much-
We'll do our best. So we'll send something out.
But if we
I
could-
just want to thank the board for trying to do this early, because it'd be a great way to begin the budget cycle for 2014.
Yes, it would.
absolutely.
I mean, if we get into March, we want to do it early March,
Right.
right? Before spring break.
I want to avoid the
Well,
Ides
Okay.
of March.
That was it for me?
Did you say transportation and I missed it?
Yes.
Yeah, those two dates that we have. And,
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
January
Just
31st.
had to look at something. Okay, thank you. Yes, town attorney.
Nothing, thank you.
All right, that brings us to item number 5, public comment.
Andrew, can I do a public service announcement?
Yes, a PSA coming from
Yes.
our own trustee.
Just because this affected my family this week, Denver Post, apparently the flooded cars from Hurricane Sandy are being put to auction and making their way across the country. They should all be trashed, but in fact, they're sort of being dried out and moved to the markets that don't require flood salvage, and Colorado is one of those states. One of my sons happens to be in the market for one, and couldn't understand why there was so much condensation on the inside of the windows of this car, and I happened to come across this on Sunday. So if you're buying a car in Colorado, just beware.
It's buyer beware, and you should ask, has this car been in the flood?
Ask for the Carfax.
Carfax?
So we're having a PSA and an advertisement all in one meeting.
What more could you want?
So we're getting...
Page 5, Sunday's Denver Post.
Well, a lot of those cars, actually, they send them to Nigeria, this according to this article, to refurbish them and sell them over there, but we certainly don't want them here.
Okay. Item number 5, public comment on consent agenda or non-agenda items.
All right. This is a first.
It's a first.
Is this a first?
Wow. Does somebody at least just come up anyway?
That brings us to 6, presentations, Chamber of Commerce.
Feel deprived.
Hello, I'm Heather Craycraft with the Superior Chamber of Commerce, and thank you for the time this month to just give you a few updates, since we obviously are playing catch-up as we've begun the new year. On the subject of transportation, I have been offered and greatly appreciate the staff's consideration of including the Chamber with an additional breakfast for the business owners to update them on the transportation, really of all the potential things that will be going on over the next few years. So thank you very much to staff for including us, and we met actually this morning to talk about exactly how that will go and how we can best give them the information and really create a pattern of information following that, especially if we get some new people to the table. So thank you to the Assistant Town Manager, Beth Moisky, for her time, and she and I actually will be hand-delivering invitations to many of the business owners. So it's on behalf of the Chamber that we get that opportunity to do that, and as well, Beth and I will get a chance just to say hello and make sure everything's going well in the community. So thank you. At the same time, the Chamber will be advertising that breakfast for transportation. We're doing the same with those residential meetings. So we're trying to allot a few of our business owners in the community do also reside here in Superior. So we've heard from a few of them, if they can't make the breakfast, that hopefully they will attend the evening ones. So along that same note, after Matt and the town manager and I have talked about meeting with those business owners, so Beth and I do have a plan to basically hit all of our storefronts in the next 6 months, which is probably a task. But we do have a few on the calendar, so we are looking forward to that opportunity. We did have a ribbon cutting for Celtic Steps. It's actually pronounced Celtic for all those sports fans out there. I have to train myself too. But Celtic Steps is the Irish Dance Studio right over here in the marketplace. They are thrilled to be here. This is actually their 9th studio that is opened, but they are a transplant from Boulder, and it's a great location for them, and many of their parents are excited about it, to be in this location because they're really bringing a regional draw to their studio. On that note, on Thursday, January 24th, we are doing a ribbon cutting for 100% Chiropractic, which are the other newest marketplace residents, so to speak, over here by Tutti Frutti. So if you are able to join us, please do so. 2 more things on my list is right now the Chamber's in the midst of our renewals, and at the same time we produce the annual directory for the community that we use from the town's perspective for anyone who's new residents moving into the community, as well as really any references to what is it that we do in our community. So we're in the process of doing that right now, and so far so good. I would like to report, and I'll give you more next month once we get the renewal deadline of the 18th. So I'd be remiss not to say if there are any business owners out there that are not members, we would love to have your support. We obviously work very closely with the town and appreciate that relationship, but we really do act as a liaison in the community to better the environment for all of us. So it's a minimal payment for the year, and right now is the time because you're included in the directory.
Great, thanks. How was Skate with Santa?
Oh, yes. We haven't spoken since Skate with Santa. It was fantastic. We had it later in the season, so to speak, but we're thankful to Boulder Valley Ice for any time they can give us. So it was fantastic. We probably had about the same number. We moved it from a Saturday to a Sunday, which we were a little concerned about, but it worked out very well for, I think we had about the same number of attendees, over 450 people. Santa photos, crafts, and thank you to Panera Bread for providing our sweet treats, and then Bean and Berry just across the bridge provided all the hot cocoa. So
Great.
we had some fantastic attendees, and I would be missed if I didn't mention our two sponsors, too. From the marketplace, My Kids Dentist stepped up, and we're a corporate sponsor, so we appreciate their help, and Instant Imprints from Louisville.
Great, thank you. Trustee Skumatz?
I just want to also thank you for speaking well into the mic, and I bet you people on the TV did not have to strain to hear you. A nice change, thank you.
Thank
Not
you.
for you, but for general.
Well, I am a sports fan, so.
What date did you say for 100% chiropractic?
Thursday, January 24th.
All right, thanks. That brings us to the consent agenda, and remaining on the consent agenda is approval of the minutes of the December 10th, 2012 Board of Trustees meeting, acceptance of the meeting notes for the Open Space Advisory Committee and the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee, adoption of resolutions regarding public posting locations for the town, Superior Urban Renewal Authority, Superior McCaslin Interchange Metropolitan District, and Superior Metropolitan District Number 1, adoption of a resolution making appointments to the Rocky Flats Stewardship Council, approval of a liquor license renewal for the Conoco store, approval of a liquor license renewal for the Safeway store, approval of a liquor license renewal for Sushi Yoshi Restaurant, adoption of a resolution appointing members to the Recycling and Conservation Advisory Committee, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement with Keep It Clean Partnership. I think I got all of those. With that, I'll entertain a motion to approve the consent agenda by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Williams. Discussion.
Yes.
And we're spending money, so.
We are
Phyllis.
spending money.
Williams?
Yes.
Sorelli?
Yes.
Goris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Thank you. That brings us to what was H, adoption of a resolution approving an agreement renewal with KP Consulting Associates for Economic Development Consulting Services. Trustee Pennington.
Yes, the only reason for pulling this is to make the community entirely aware that we do have a consultant in economic development, and that was intended to be originally a 6-month assignment, I think, and it looks like it's going to be a year and 6 months if this is approved, right? And I just didn't want it to get lost in all those other things you just read. I also wanted to, as I go through the scope of work, I didn't see on there a bullet point for assisting with the development of a potential incentive program. I may have overlooked it since it is somewhat lengthy, but if it's not on there, I think Katie would be a good person to help with that. That's my...
Yeah, the town has its financial incentive policy that's in place, and any modifications that we want to make to that, we would definitely get her input and thoughts on that as well.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I personally have been delighted with the work I've seen so far, so I am totally behind this. Anybody else want to comment?
Any questions or comments from the board? Anything from the public?
Just ditto back at that.
Ditto back at that. Okay. With that, I'll entertain a motion. Trustee Williams?
I'd like to make a motion for the Town of Superior Resolution Number R-3, Series 2013. A resolution of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Superior approving a professional services agreement with KP Consulting and Associates for Economic Development Consultant Services.
Motion by Trustee Williams, second by Trustee Gregorius. Discussion. Phyllis?
Sorelli?
Yes.
Goris?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Muckle?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Thank you very much. That motion carries. That brings us to item number 8, preliminary approval of an ordinance amending 16-1-70 of the Superior Municipal Code regarding the definition of election season. Mr. Magley?
Thank you, Mayor. Currently, Section 16-170 defines an election season to mean 30 days prior to and 2 days after any regular or special town election, any county election, state or federal primary or general election. With our changing our election time to be November in coordination with state and federal elections, and the use of mail ballots, which was evident in the last election, the board had expressed a desire to maybe expand the time that people could put out their signs on residences or right-of-way, or even private businesses, for any particular political issue or candidate. As a result of that direction, the Planning Commission reviewed this section of the ordinance, or the code, and discussed a number of options, and ultimately decided to recommend to the board to adopt an extension of the 30 days to 45 days prior to any election. This would allow more time for people to get their signs out ahead of when mail-in ballots go out to the public. So we provided, in addition to the minutes of the Planning Commission, information on what other communities in our area do as far as election season definitions, which is in your cover. And we'll have depending on the board's discussion and direction tonight, we will have a final reading on January 28th.
Justice Gomez?
So I don't have a problem with this, but I just wondered if a different wording had been considered, something like 7 days before mail ballots go out, in case there's some deviation, how early ballots go out. Is there some, what if they start saying, okay, we're going to start mailing them out 60 days ahead, or, I don't know, but I'm just trying to plan ahead for possible changes in calendars.
We unfortunately never know what the legislature's going to do with the election deadlines. You're right, they could easily say ballots have to go out even earlier.
Or
Just don't know that
can go out.
there's any way to foresee that.
So that's why I was suggesting possibly say 7 days before mailing of ballots.
Yeah, we would know in an election season when those are supposed to be mailed out, right?
Right.
Yep.
Yeah.
So I think that's a good idea.
I actually like 14 days. That's sort of the intent of what this was, but I do like the approach.
Well, and actually, signs were able to be put out at the beginning of October, and they didn't go out, the mail-in ballots didn't go out until like the 15th. So, I mean, that's more than 7 days.
And 7 days was merely
I
toss out.
understand.
And my perspective is that I would prohibit election signs in the public right away, and I don't think they're providing any information to any voter. I mean, you can certainly get your name out there, but that doesn't provide any information, and it's, to my mind, it just leads to sign clutter. So,
And just more information for the board for your discussion. During an election season, it doesn't just have to be a sign pertaining to an election or candidate.
Right.
It could be a business taking advantage of that and putting their signs out for 30 days as well.
The other thing to point out, if we do the 7 days or 14 days prior to the mailing of ballots, we may have to tweak that a bit, because we may call a special election, just a town. Let's say you have a Tabor issue, or let's not use the Tabor issue. You have something you need to put on the ballot, and you want to do it in February, when there's not a regular election to be coordinated. You may or may not choose to have a mail ballot election. So using the term 7 days or 14 days prior to the mailing of ballots may not cover all circumstances. You may choose to have a polling place election.
So why not do it the 45 days or 14 days, whichever is
Whichever's
earlier or
earlier.
later, whatever is the right language for that. I'm not a lawyer, so.
Yeah.
I just want to make one other note. This chart here is kind of missing how long the signs are allowed to be out
Right.
with all the other
I think they don't
entities.
specify them. I think that's the point.
They don't specify?
That's the way I took the point, that
Well-
we were the only ones who did.
You mean when they have to be removed?
No, when they put in.
The whole issue
When
when
they
they
go
go
out.
out.
It only says when they're removed, it doesn't say.
I assumed it was because no one else specified that, and we were the only ones who did.
It just seems like you're just missing that key part of the
I
information.
kept reading it. How can,
So it's hard to make the comparison.
Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, is it 30 days prior, or is it just anytime you want?
We'll update that chart. for the next reading.
Okay, that would be good to have the
Our ordinance is related to the temporary sign ordinance, which just limits how long a temporary sign can be out, period. And so it extends that period, I think.
I mean, I'm with the mayor in a lot of ways. I don't see a reason to change this from the way it is right now. As a matter of fact, 45 days to me is more opportune for people to steal signs. So that's what happened this time. So
45
A lot of days.
45 days is very generous. It almost can stay up 30 days. That the earliest of 15 days prior to the mailing, or 14 days, or 15 days prior to the mail-in ballot, or 30 days prior to the election, whichever is earliest. 45 gets signs out there for a long
I know
period.
it's clutter, it's visually polluting, I'm not interested in that, but guess we'll have to vote our conscience, so.
Okay. Public comment regarding this, or? Seeing none?
I do have a question.
Yes, Trustee Rowland.
In the actual wording of the ordinance, second whereas, it has reference to 60 days prior to any regular, was that just,
That's
has that been
a typo.
corrected? Okay.
45.
Okay.
Went to the planning commission initially as 60.
It went
That's
up.
correct.
Wow.
And they
said
asked to
60?
go back to 45.
I initially drafted it as 60, and they moved it back.
The 45, okay.
Okay. I'll entertain a motion one way or the other.
Against it.
Okay. Everybody in support of this?
Well, can we just sort of talk about, is there a consensus as to what you'd like to see?
You had an idea, what was your last idea?
30 days
The
or-
earliest of 30 days prior to election, or 15 days before the mail-in ballots hit.
The mailing of the ballots, not when they arrive, you just.
The mailing of the scheduled mailing of the ballots,
That would be fine with me.
Whichever is earlier.
whichever is earlier.
I'd be in favor of that.
And so you're banking on the fact that maybe there is an election where the mail-in ballots go out later?
No, where there are
Or
none.
there's no ballot.
Or there are none, or they go out like they did this time, where it was 14 days before.
Right.
Okay. I would support that.
But I like signs in right-of-ways, so I'd like to keep the right-of-way.
Do you really?
Only for an election, right?
It's a democratic process, got to get your name out there.
Okay, I need, Phyllis?
Yes.
Yes.
Please.
I think there's always going to be mail ballots because you have your permanent mail ballots. So are you not talking about those?
No, we don't, if we do a town-only election, we are not required to comply with the mail-only ballot.
Really?
No.
Oh, yikes.
So that's only if we do a coordinated election.
But we can.
We can, but it will be a decision of the board at that time whether or not to mail any ballots, to mail only to permanent mail-in voters, to do a full mail ballot election, or whether to do a polling place election.
Thanks.
Okay.
Okey-doke.
Motion, anybody?
I think should be agreement.
Well, I'd like to have discussion first. Does that seem to,
It makes sense
Appeal?
to me in the fact that the scenario that happened this election is exactly the 30 days.
as was the scenario in the previous election?
Correct, and it may have been maybe a couple more days. It might have been 32 days total, but not 45.
Right.
I would
I'll
say
just
the
say
30.
that after this year's experience, any day longer is a day too much.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, seriously, I totally agree with it.
So I'll make a motion that this be amended to, and again, I hate the language on the fly, and maybe...
Well, it's a preliminary, so
Okay, preliminary, okay. The earlier of 30 days prior to an election, or 15 days before the mailing, the scheduled mailing of the mail-in ballot.
I'm happy to second that.
Okay, a motion and a second by trustee Skumatz. Further discussion? Well, I certainly like it better than 45 days, so I appreciate that. So
Me too.
once again, I'm happy to get rid of it, but I could be in favor of that. So all in favor of the preliminary? Okay. So Hanson, Sorelli, Schoolmouse, Marshall, Williams, Bennington, opposers.
Campaigning in general, it looks like.
No, I would do like 7 days. I wouldn't do 15 days prior to the mailing. So that's the only difference.
That would have made it less than 30 days this time.
But it would have gotten 30 days.
You wouldn't have.
No,
You would have, because it's.
You still have no matter what, you have 30 days.
Oh, okay,
So
it's
that
earlier
you-
up. You're
that's-
right.
Yeah.
Okay, so this is coming back next meeting or next month? Next meeting. Okay. That brings us to item number 9, approval of quarterly contingency grants. Mr. Mackley.
Thank you, Mayor. This contingency grant is for the fourth quarter of 2012. We're wrapping up our 2012 fiscal year. The Board of Trustees appropriates $10,000 every year to award to groups that benefit the community through various programs or events, and with $2,500 being allocated for each quarter. The town received 2 grant applications for the fourth quarter contingency grants totaling $2,300. One request was from Soaring Eagles Alliance, which is an El Dorado K through 8 PTO, for $1,500 was their request, and then Superior Rugby Football Club, which was a request for $800. The Soaring Eagles Alliance request was for the assistance in funding the Front Range Child Assault Prevention Program, which educates students on how to protect themselves from all forms of violence in and outside the classroom. And then the Superior Rugby Football Club grant request was to purchase supplies and equipment that would be utilized for their spring 2013 season, and as well as long-term use. These items included tackling bags, shields to support concussion prevention program, hydration components and hydration bottles and carriers, coolers, and first aid kits, mouthpieces, and concussion detection and prevention materials.
Thank you. Board discussion? Trustee Hanson.
So of course, I'll recuse myself from voting on this, but I do want to point out that there's absolutely no benefit at all that comes to me or any of our coaches that are part of this program. This strictly is 100% for all the kids on the program.
Thank you. Recusing yourself just from the rugby or the whole thing? Or this
No, from the rugby.
Yeah.
So I'm going to recuse myself from the Soaring Eagles Alliance because even though I wouldn't get anything from this, I have children at El Dorado K-8, so potentially they would have some positive impact from that, so I think that would be inappropriate.
Mine's a general question. I always am amazed that when we have free money, that we're only getting 2 applications, and so that concerns me as to how groups are being notified. Are we sending out a personal letter of notification, any group we know that operates out of the Superior area, or how are people being notified?
Or previous grantees that didn't get their whole grant?
Right.
Yeah.
Something like that.
It's not always 2, though. This happens to be this year. There are other times we have more than 2.
That's,
So
in the
That's what we're
past,
saying.
we've always
Right,
had
right.
many, but since we reinstated this, we've only had 1 or 2 each quarter.
I'll follow up with you, provide you the information for the
Right.
entire year, and then
Yeah.
as well as how we
Yeah.
follow up and advertise it.
There are a lot of groups out there that are struggling, with charitable donations down, et cetera. So this just raises a red flag that we have an issue here.
I think some of that responsibility falls to us. We're part of committees and so forth. We should be talking about it. I know with the scout that applied for it, 2 different grants that I spoke to him about that, with the Superior Elementary School, the building of that gazebo.
Yeah.
Spoke to the PTA about that and
Yeah.
passed that on, the information that we have this grant available, so.
Yeah. I
told El Dorado K through 8.
Yeah.
So
I actually think that's a bit of a perceptual problem, that we've just had 2 people recuse themselves, and frankly, as a trustee who doesn't have to recuse themselves at this point, it makes me a little nervous that this is starting to get the reputation of it's who you know. not how deserving your organization is. So I agree with you, Chris, that we need to always make everybody aware of it, but it's got to be beyond us as well.
I agree
So
with
this is just an
Sandy.
appeal.
Yeah, I agree with Sandy, it's just publicizing this better. Because it's hard to believe people wouldn't be asking for grants if they know they're available, just,
How many nonprofits do we have in the town of Superior that could benefit? And if maybe we
It's
could
hard
pull a
to
list
tell.
together.
Plenty we've turned down in the
reach out to
past.
Yeah.
I work with the grants program at CU, and we've got a working list of, 150 organizations, and every time we do a grants award, all 150 get the whole thing with deadlines and all that kind of stuff. So if we don't have that, we do have this, maybe the volunteer coordinator can take that on and create our rolling list.
Yeah.
Great idea.
I mean, obviously, this is something that I would be voting for, obviously. I can't imagine anybody not voting for this, but no pressure to other trustees.
There you go. So just along these lines, I've always wondered if we should provide take part of this contingency grant and offer it as a scholarship to a Superior resident who graduated from high school
With honors
with honors or whatever. So
That's a great
just something
idea.
to think about.
Can they just apply?
I don't think so. I don't think it would be.
Well, there are,
It would be, I suppose.
it wouldn't, I don't know.
Be weird criteria.
along that line, maybe not so much a college scholarship or anything, but there are kids in the community who would like, for example, what comes to mind is Monarch's program, where every kid needs to have a computer, or a deserving youngster wants to go to to help the flood victims in Hurricane Sandy over Christmas, where they need help with airfare or something. Some of these volunteer programs, because they're very, that's very encouraged for college apps. So I sort of like where you're going with that.
So maybe we can explore that a little bit, maybe during our retreat or whatever.
Retreat topic.
There's something we can do more, yeah.
So in the interim, though, we need to find a way to get this out before we have time to talk about it.
So I agree. Just to move off of this particular topic, though, I'm going to recommend that we split this into two separate items.
I agree, so you guys can vote.
Yeah.
Right.
Okay. So with that,
Okay.
So I'd like to move to,
yeah, Trustee Skumatz.
to move to approve the funding of the fourth quarter contingency grant for the Soaring Eagles Alliance.
Motion by Trustee Skumatz, second by Trustee Sorelli. Once again, I'll be recusing myself and spending money. So Phyllis.
Cirilli?
Yes.
Gregorius?
Yes.
Hanson?
Yes.
Pennington?
Yes.
Skumatz?
Yes.
Williams?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Joe,
Entertain a second
Okay.
motion.
I think Joe can.
I move that we approve the fourth quarter contingency grant to the Superior Rugby Football Club.
Second by Trustee Skumatz. Further discussion?
Just for the record, I'll be recusing myself.
And, I feel bad about this, but I'm going to vote no just because I think it's a perception issue. So nothing against rugby or you. So, but I
But you
just
don't like Chris either.
thank you for clarifying where I was going.
Wait, can you explain that? Because I'm
Can you
confused now.
please?
Just because trustees, I think it's a perception problem that a trustee is associated with an organization, even though you're recusing yourself, and I appreciate that it potentially could look bad to the public. So,
And I completely agree. And Chris is a friend. And I have voted before on it. And I just feel a little uncomfortable because I feel like I'm favoring you. And I want to favor you, but I don't want it to seem a conflict of interest or any kind of impropriety on my part.
Okay.
So I can't recuse myself, is that correct?
Yeah, you can vote.
I can vote.
Trustee Gregorius?
I feel somewhat differently than the mayor and Deb. I feel this has nothing to do with Chris, this has to do with the rugby organization, and that's why I'm going to be voting in favor of it.
Yeah, totally understand that.
Whether Chris was here or not, my vote would still be yes, so.
I agree with that, too.
Trustee Skumatz?
And I don't want to penalize the Rogan kids for that either. And I don't know, it's one of those situations where, so damned if you do, damned if you don't.
Correct.
Chris puts his name on, or he doesn't put his name on, and, so I'm glad that he's forthright about being associated with it, so.
Yes, I appreciate that as well.
I appreciate it too.
Reiterate that there is no conflict of interest, and in reviewing the application and the scoring, there's no question it's an organization deserving, and so I'm going to support this, and I would not want to punish the rugby club just because one of our trustees is also giving his time as a volunteer to that club.
Yep.
And so,
And maybe writes good grant apps.
at least aware of the grant. That's part of the problem that Sandy
I
brought
understand.
up, but still, it's, again, I think it's a very good application of the funds.
Okay. Trustee Gregorius?
No, ladies first.
If I could make a recommendation before this even comes to us the next time, if in fact we have only received 2 apps, or 1 app, or 3 apps, that it doesn't even come before us until further effort is put into it to make it more widely noticed. Because it does put us in a situation.
It does.
We will task our volunteer person to,
So.
whoever the manager would like to
If
task
we have a
to.
situation where we have 1 or 2 applications after we contacted, because you can only receive up to a certain amount in a certain number of years. I'd have to look at what exactly it is. So some groups that may have reapplied for funds wouldn't be able to. So if we contact a bunch of different groups that we think might benefit, and we get 2 applications.
You'll let us know the meeting ahead of time.
I was punishing those 2 groups.
Right. I would like to have the list of who we've notified, and if we have duly notified them, I do believe that can be done by mail as well as by email, and if we're satisfied that a proper amount has been notified, then yes, we can vote on 2. But there's going to be a little more burden of proof, I think, in the future.
Okay, I think there's a motion and a second.
Yep.
If there's further discussion,
Lisa.
Lisa seconded.
Thank you.
okay. Phyllis?
And I'm not sure where I'm at, so I'm just going to read off names. Williams,
No.
Skumatz,
Yes.
Pennington,
Yes.
Muckle,
No.
I won't do Hanson, Gregorius,
Yes.
Zarelli.
Yes.
Okay, motion carries. Thank you very much. And once again, always puts me in an awkward spot, so I hope that you understand where I'm coming from. With that, that brings us to item number 10, executive session to determine positions relative to matters that may be subject to negotiations.